Some books come to you easily, and others you have to hunt for. The prayer book office was one of the latter for me, because it has long been out of print. Copies can be surprisingly expensive when they surface, and when they do appear, they're almost always, well, well used, which, in fairness, is exactly what you would expect of a prayer book meant to live in hands daily. For years, I searched for one on and off. Every so often, a copy would appear online, usually really worn from years of faithful use and priced exceedingly high. Then one day, almost by accident, I found a listing on eBay from a seller in England. The price was astonishingly low, and the condition was listed as like new. So I took the chance. When the book finally arrived and I opened it, I had one of those small moments of delight that only book lovers really understand. The ribbon markers were still tucked neatly into the page exactly as they are when a book leaves the publisher. This copy had never been used. 45 years after it was printed, the book was still waiting for its first prayers, and I was delighted to give it some. Some books do not try to reinvent prayer, they simply deepen it. The Prayer Book Office, compiled and edited by Howard Galley and published by Seabury Press in 1980, belongs to that quiet and faithful category. It was created in the early years following the adoption of the 1979 Book of Common Prayer, and its purpose was clear from the beginning: to enrich the recitation of the Episcopal Church's daily office rather than replace it. And that distinction matters. When the 1979 prayer book was introduced, it quietly restored something Anglicanism had largely lost since the Reformation: the permission to use antiphons with the Psalms and the biblical canticles. That small rubric opened an ancient door in the church's prayer life, and Howard Galley stepped through that door and furnished the room, let me tell you. Galley compiled the prayer book office specifically to expand the liturgical texture of morning and evening prayer. The book provides seasonal antiphons for the canticles appointed throughout the week, along with a psalter furnished with antiphons for use throughout the year and during the Easter season. It also includes proper antiphons for the Psalms and for the Magnificat on major Sundays and principal feasts and other important occasions in the church year. In effect, the book restores the seasonal voice of the church to the daily office. The Psalms are no longer simply read, they are framed by the rhythm of Advent, Lent, Easter, and the great feasts. At nearly 800 pages, the prayer book office is substantial. It's not just a small supplement, but a full liturgical companion. Among its features, and I'm going to repeat myself here a little bit: seasonal antiphons for the canticles appointed during the week, the Psalter with antiphons for the church year and Easter season, proper antiphons for Psalms and the Magnificat on major feasts and Sundays, non-scriptural readings for the eves of certain feasts of Christ and for Holy Week, a form of Vespers for Easter week, a weekly distribution of Psalms for the noonday office, the daily office, Rite 2, and the Psalter, the Great Litany, collects for the church year, tables of lessons for morning and evening prayer reprinted from the 79 Book of Common Prayer. What the book intentionally does not include are the daily scripture readings themselves. Those are still meant to be read from a Bible or a lectionary. In other words, this book enriches the office without attempting to replace the prayer book that anchors it. Now, Howard Galley was not a casual observer of the prayer book revision. For 12 years, I think, he served as assistant to the coordinator for the prayer book revision and worked on many of the committees responsible for drafting the 79 Book of Common Prayer. He was also a member of the North American Academy of Liturgy and the Council of Associated Parishes. In short, Galley knew the prayer book inside and out. And this book reflects that familiarity. It is careful, faithful, and deeply Anglican in its sensibility, balancing simplicity with Catholic depth. Seabury Press clearly expected this volume to be used and not merely shelved, as my volume has been all these years. The book was produced with a flexible leather grain cover, and it's green, rounded corners, and 6 ribbon markers in liturgical colors, small details that make daily use easier. Anyone who has tried to pray the office with multiple books open at once will appreciate those ribbons. They are not a decoration. They are tools. And if you ask me, more ribbons are always preferable to fewer ribbons. The greatest strength of the prayer book office, I think, is that it thickens the spiritual texture of daily office prayer without overwhelming it. It accomplishes 3 important things, in my opinion. It restores ancient liturgical practice. Antiphons reconnect Anglican daily prayer with the broader Western tradition of the Church. It honors the 1979 prayer book rather than competing with the BCP. It supports it. And it encourages a contemplative rhythm. The office slows down and becomes more meditative when framed by antiphons and seasonal prayer. For those drawn to monastic or semi-monastic spirituality within Anglicanism, this book feels like a natural companion. There are, however, some practical challenges. The book is large and somewhat cumbersome. Not as cumbersome as some prayer books, but cumbersome enough. It's not particularly beginner-friendly. However, it's much more beginner-friendly than the Anglican breviary. The other thing about this book is that it's dependent on other texts, such as a Bible or a lectionary, for those daily readings. For someone new to the daily office, juggling multiple volumes can feel like learning liturgical choreography. But for seasoned prayers, that complexity becomes part of the rhythm. So, some final thoughts. Some books shout, some books preach, some books attempt to fix the church. This one simply helps you pray. The prayer book office is for people who believe that daily prayer is not merely a duty, but a craft, something shaped patiently over years, even decades. Will this become my daily driver? Maybe, maybe not. Time will tell. I tend to gravitate towards single volume prayer books, those sturdy companions where everything you need for prayer lives between 2 covers. There's something satisfying about that kind of completeness to me. The prayer book office is not quite that sort of book. It is more of a companion, a liturgical toolkit meant to stand beside the 1979 Book of Common Prayer. So my guess is that it will become more of a reference work for me, a book I reach for when I want to enrich the office, add the voice of the church here, explore the deeper rhythms of Anglican daily prayer. But one thing I can promise, it will not sit on a shelf gathering dust. Books meant for prayer should bear the marks of prayer. Ribbons worn thin, pages softened by turning, perhaps even a stray coffee ring or 2 earned during early morning offices. In the end, I always come back to a simple rule of thumb. The best prayer book is the one you will actually use. By that measure, the Prayer Book Office is a sweet and thoughtful companion that serves the 1979 Book of Common Prayer remarkably well. It expands the texture of the office without complicating its heart. And I suspect that as the months and years roll on, I will find myself returning to it again and again, learning its patterns, discovering its small treasures, and letting it slowly work its way into the rhythm of my daily prayer. Before we wrap up, thank you for spending a little time with me today. If you enjoyed this review and conversations like this about prayer books, liturgy, and spiritual life, I'd appreciate it if you'd give the video a like and subscribe to the channel. It really does help the work continue and helps others who love prayer and daily office find these conversations. And please do come back. There are so many prayer books out there, old ones, new ones, forgotten treasures, modern experiments, and I plan to explore as many of them as I can. After all, there are a lot of prayer books to review, and as always, far little time. Until next time, peace and happy praying. God bless.